When the great cataclysm struck Earth, humanity found itself on the precipice of annihilation. The planet's final days were a mix of fire and ice, as alien invaders descended upon the once thriving world, their monstrous fleets blotting out the sun. The exodus began in desperate haste, as the survivors fled into the cold void of space, leaving behind the ruins of their homeworld. Among the few who managed to escape were a ragtag group of scientists, engineers, soldiers, and civilians. Led by General Marcus Quinn, a decorated military officer who had survived the first wave of the invasion, they piloted the last of Earth's great warships, the Exiles, a vessel that had been designed as a last-ditch weapon against the alien forces but now served as humanity's lifeline. The survivors were broken but determined, leaving Earth behind as they entered the vast, uncharted expanse of the galaxy. The journey was long, and the Exiles was not designed for a prolonged mission. Supplies dwindled as days turned into weeks, then into months. The crew had no destination, only the hope that somewhere, in the endless darkness, they would find sanctuary. General Quinn knew their survival depended not just on the ship, but on the minds of those who accompanied him. As they drifted through the void, the survivors began to make plans. They would not simply survive, they would rebuild. Earth's exiles would forge a new empire, one that would rival the great galactic civilizations, and they would do it not through brute force, but through the strength of their ingenuity, their unity, and their determination. The first sign of hope came when they encountered a star system on the edge of an uncharted region. It was an unassuming system, consisting of 3 planets, 2 gas giants and a barren rock. But there was one feature that caught their attention, a massive, ancient structure orbiting the 3rd planet, hidden in the shadow of its moon. After months of exploration, the Exiles crew discovered the structure was a remnant of an ancient civilization, long extinct, but with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. The vessel's engineers worked tirelessly to decipher the structure's secrets, and what they found would change the course of history. Within the structure, they discovered an energy source that could power their ship indefinitely. This discovery was a breakthrough, one that would ensure their continued survival. But more importantly, the technology embedded in the ruins was unlike anything humanity had seen. It was not just advanced, it was adaptable, a fusion of biological and mechanical components that could be modified to meet their needs. The survivors began to reverse engineer this alien technology, unlocking tools and weapons that would give them the edge they needed to defend themselves, and eventually, to conquer. Quinn's leadership was tested as the survivors debated their next steps. Some wanted to stay hidden, to continue running from the warlords who had destroyed Earth. Others, the more ambitious, argued that this was the moment to take action. Earth's exiles would not cower in the shadows forever. The galaxy was vast, and they had the tools to carve out their place in it. After days of deliberation, the decision was made. The survivors would form a new empire, one that would rise from the ashes of Earth's fall. The Exiles would become their flagship, but they needed more. They needed allies, resources, and a base of operations. It was time to make their presence known. As the crew set their course to the nearest habitable planet, Quinn stood on the bridge, staring at the stars ahead. The path would not be easy. They would face opposition from the powerful galactic empires, and they would encounter creatures beyond their imagination. But one thing was certain, humanity had a fire inside that no alien force could extinguish. The exiles would not be subjugated. They would not be forgotten. They would build an empire, and it would be one that the galaxy would never forget. The Exiles moved forward, carrying Earth's last hope, and with it, the promise of a new beginning for humanity among the stars. As the Exiles moved deeper into the galaxy, the crew worked tirelessly to adapt the alien technology they had discovered. The ship's systems were upgraded, weapons were fine-tuned, and the crew was reshaped from desperate survivors into a force capable of standing against the galaxy's greatest powers. The survivors knew they had only one shot. If they failed to secure a foothold in the galaxy, they would be wiped out, just as their ancestors had been by the alien invaders who destroyed Earth. General Quinn was acutely aware of the stakes. The once proud military leader was now more than just a commander, he was the unifying symbol of Earth's exiles. His calm demeanor and sharp intellect earned the respect of his people, but there were still those who doubted their ability to truly succeed. The question that loomed over their efforts was simple: could they really take on the galaxy's established powers, or were they doomed to repeat Earth's tragic fall? The answer came sooner than expected. The planet they had targeted for colonization was called Ishan. It was a mid-tier world, located in a relatively isolated system, which made it the perfect candidate for an initial expansion. However, the moment they arrived in orbit, the crew of the Etheris realized that things weren't as simple as they had hoped. Ishan was already home to an alien species known as the Arishans, a highly intelligent, militaristic race that had expanded their dominion across several star systems. Though they were not among the largest galactic empires, the Arishans had a reputation for being fierce and unyielding in battle. They were not interested in peace or diplomacy, their territory was everything, and they fought relentlessly to defend it. The Etheris approached the planet cautiously, but it didn't take long for the Arishan fleet to respond. A vast armada of sleek, menacing warships appeared on the horizon, signaling that the Exiles' presence was not welcome. Quinn knew that if they hesitated now, their mission would be doomed before it even began. The moment the Arishans began to fire, Quinn gave the order. Activate the new weapons. The Etheris' newly enhanced weapons systems roared to life. The ship's cannons fired beams of concentrated energy, cutting through the enemy ships with precision. It was a battle unlike any the Arishans had ever faced. Their fleets were powerful, but they had never encountered an enemy with such technological adaptability and tactical brilliance. The Etheris' crew had spent months learning and refining their newfound knowledge of alien technology, and now it was paying off. The battle raged on, with both sides taking heavy losses, but the tide began to turn in favor of the humans. General Quinn, standing firm in the heart of the chaos, observed the Arishans' tactics, quickly deciphering their weaknesses. The Exiles didn't have the numbers, but they had something far more dangerous: the ingenuity and resourcefulness that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. The Arishans, though fierce, had underestimated their foes. They assumed the humans were just another primitive species, unaware of the advanced technologies they had acquired. This miscalculation would cost them dearly. As the battle reached its climax, Quinn made the bold decision to board an Arishan flagship, intending to cut off the enemy leadership and force a surrender. With a small team of elite soldiers, he infiltrated the ship and engaged in a fierce firefight through its narrow halls. Each moment was a struggle for survival, but Quinn's resolve was unshakable. The fate of humanity rested on their success. In the command center of the flagship, Quinn confronted the Arishan fleet commander, a towering figure whose eyes burned with the arrogance of an empire that had never known defeat. "You've made a grave mistake, Arishan," Quinn said, his voice steady as he aimed his weapon at the commander's chest. "I am no fool, human," the commander sneered, his hand reaching for a concealed weapon. "You are outmatched. You will fall before the might of the Arishan Empire." "We'll see about that," Quinn replied, and in that moment, the commander's arrogance proved to be his undoing. With a single, swift shot, Quinn neutralized the threat, and the Arishan fleet was thrown into disarray. In the wake of their victory, the surviving Arishans had no choice but to surrender. They were forced to acknowledge humanity's strength and ingenuity. This first conquest sent shockwaves through the galaxy, as word spread of the new empire rising from the ashes of Earth. Humanity had proven itself to be a force not to be underestimated. The Etheris and its crew had made their first move on the galactic stage, but this was only the beginning. The Exiles of Earth were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were taking their place among the stars, and soon, they would show the galaxy that they would never again be a footnote in history. After the victory at Ishan, the Exiles of Earth had established a foothold in the galaxy. But securing their first conquest was only the beginning. General Quinn knew that a single victory would not be enough to build the empire they envisioned. They needed more than just military strength. They needed to unite a galaxy that was fragmented by centuries of war and entrenched rivalries. The victory on Ishan had brought the Exiles' attention, but not all of it was favorable. Many of the galactic powers took notice of the sudden rise of this new force, one that was small in numbers but already capable of wielding advanced technology and deadly tactics. While some viewed humanity's exiles with cautious curiosity, others saw them as a threat that needed to be eliminated before they grew too powerful. The first challenge came from the Zalran Empire, a sprawling galactic regime known for its ruthless conquest of neighboring systems. The Zalrans controlled dozens of star systems and maintained an iron grip on their subjects. When they learned of the humans' rise, their emperor, Vrinox, viewed them as an affront to his rule. The Zalran Empire had crushed countless civilizations, and they would not tolerate the emergence of a new power. A diplomatic envoy arrived from the Zalran capital, demanding the exiles' immediate surrender and the cession of their newly acquired worlds. To this envoy, General Quinn sent only a simple response: "We will not kneel." The Zalrans had underestimated humanity's resolve. Rather than cower, the exiles began to expand their territory. They sent diplomatic missions to neutral systems, offering trade, protection, and an invitation to join their growing empire. Earth's exiles did not seek to conquer indiscriminately, they wanted allies, those who would stand with them in the face of the galactic giants. The diplomatic approach proved successful with several systems, who saw an opportunity to escape the oppression of the larger empires. These new allies brought with them vital resources, raw materials, shipyards, and trade routes, which allowed the exiles to grow in both influence and strength. But not all systems were willing to join them. The Zalrans, ever wary of competition, began to rally other galactic factions to their cause, forming a coalition against the humans. This coalition included the Arcton Syndicate, a group of ruthless mercenaries, the Vaktar, a race of telepathic conquerors, and several smaller, warlike species that had long been subjugated by the larger empires. Together, they formed a formidable alliance, one that could potentially overwhelm the fragile new empire that the exiles had begun to build. With war on the horizon, General Quinn gathered his council of advisors. His inner circle consisted of individuals from every corner of Earth's former civilizations, military leaders, engineers, scientists, and diplomats. All were bound by one purpose: to ensure humanity's survival, and to secure their place in the stars. "We will not back down," Quinn said, standing at the head of the table, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We will build an empire stronger than any the galaxy has ever seen. We will take what is ours, and we will protect those who stand with us. The Zalrans think they can crush us, but they haven't seen the true strength of humanity." The council agreed that the time had come to strike back. Quinn's plan was twofold: a show of military might to drive back the coalition forces, and a rallying cry for all those who had been oppressed by the larger empires. If they could weaken the coalition's resolve, they would have a chance to turn the tide in their favor. The first target was the planet of Doroth, a strategic world located in the heart of Zalran-controlled space. It was a heavily fortified planet, a stronghold of the Zalran Empire. The exiles would need to hit it hard and fast, using their newly acquired alien technology to gain the upper hand. Under Quinn's leadership, the Etherists led the charge, supported by the newly formed fleet of Earth's exiles. They attacked with precision, using stealth and superior tactics to outmaneuver the Zalran forces. The battle was brutal, but the exiles' experience in adapting to new technologies and learning from their previous battles gave them the edge they needed. The Zalran forces were forced into retreat, but the cost was high. The Etherists took heavy damage, and several of their newly allied ships were lost. The battle at Doroth proved that while the exiles were strong, they were not invincible. However, it also demonstrated something else: humanity had something that no empire could easily crush, an unyielding spirit. As the dust settled, General Quinn addressed the crew. "We've shown them what we're capable of. This is just the beginning. We are not going to stop until every corner of this galaxy knows that Earth's exiles will not be pushed around." With their first major victory over the Zalran coalition, the exiles began to see the fruits of their labor. They were no longer just survivors, they were builders of something new, something powerful. And while the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, one thing was certain: humanity's empire was no longer a dream. It was a reality. The stars were within their reach. The victory at Doroth sent ripples through the galaxy. The exiles of Earth had proven they were not just survivors, they were builders, warriors, and diplomats capable of changing the balance of power. With the Zalran Empire's forces on the retreat, General Quinn and his leadership council knew they could not afford to rest. The galaxy was vast, and while they had made powerful enemies, they had also made crucial allies. The question now was whether their new empire could stand the test of both internal and external pressures. The growing human empire had begun to solidify its influence in the galaxy. Systems that once lived under the heel of galactic empires now found themselves offered protection and a chance to thrive under Earth's exiles. Earth's technologies, combined with their new allies' resources, gave the human-led empire a military edge that few could rival. The Aetheris was no longer just a flagship, it was a symbol of strength and hope, and it had become the heart of their new military fleet. Quinn's leadership was tested once again as the Empire's expansion continued. The Zalran coalition was far from finished, and whispers of a new, even more formidable alliance had begun to surface. A number of smaller factions, some previously neutral, had begun to align with the Zalrans. The pressure was mounting, and with it came internal strife. The first of these challenges came from within the Empire itself. The newly formed Council of Leaders, which included representatives from Earth's exiles as well as their new allies, began to show signs of division. Not all agreed with Quinn's methods. Some of the more cautious factions believed that the exiles should focus on consolidation, strengthening their defenses before taking on the larger galactic empires. Others, particularly the war-hardened veterans of the Earth's military, felt that now was the time to strike decisively and expand further. It was at this critical juncture that the Vaktar, the telepathic conquerors, made their move. The Vaktar had long been known for their ability to manipulate minds and control lesser species through their telepathic abilities. Though their empire had crumbled centuries ago, they had a reputation for mercilessly subjugating those they encountered. The Vaktar, seeing the growth of the human empire as a direct challenge to their own ambitions, sought to strike at its heart. General Quinn knew that the Vaktar were a dangerous foe. They had the power to infiltrate minds and sow discord within ranks. In the early stages of their attack, a number of human commanders began to report strange behavior, unusual decisions, a lack of coordination, and sudden bouts of paranoia. Quinn suspected that the Vaktar were already working to undermine them from within. To counter this threat, Quinn decided to take the battle to the Vaktar homeworld. His plan was bold, to infiltrate the Vaktar through a psychological campaign, striking at their minds before they could strike at his. The Aetheris would lead a fleet to Vaktar space, but this time, they would rely on more than just their military strength. The human exiles had learned much from their enemies, and Quinn had an ace in the hole. He turned to Dr. Elena Farrows, one of the leading scientists on the Aetheris. She had been instrumental in reverse engineering the alien technology they had discovered, and now, she had developed a countermeasure against the Vaktar's telepathic powers, a device that could block their influence and shield human minds from mental manipulation. With the device ready for deployment, Quinn led a small task force to Vaktar territory. Their goal was to infiltrate the Vaktar's capital, a sprawling city built into the mountains of their homeworld, and destroy their central telepathic node, a massive structure that amplified their collective mental abilities. As they moved closer to their target, the Vaktar began to sense their presence. The air around them seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, as if the very planet was alive with anticipation. The soldiers aboard the Aetheris prepared for the worst, but Quinn remained focused. He knew that this mission, if successful, could cripple the Vaktar and secure their place in the galaxy. The assault on Vaktar's capital was brutal. Telepathic blasts tore through the minds of those who ventured too far from their shields, causing disorientation and madness. But with Dr. Farrow's countermeasure in place, the humans were able to push through, fighting their way to the heart of the Vaktar stronghold. The final confrontation took place within the central node itself. The Vaktar leader, a towering figure whose telepathic power radiated like a storm, confronted Quinn in the heart of the facility. Their battle was not one of brute force, but of minds, a mental duel that would decide the fate of humanity's empire. Quinn's resolve held firm. He refused to allow his people to fall under the influence of the Vaktar. As the leader's mental power crashed against his shield, Quinn used every ounce of willpower to maintain control, until, at last, the leader faltered. The Vaktar's influence was broken, and the node was destroyed. The victory was decisive. The Vaktar were no longer a threat, and their once proud empire crumbled in the aftermath. Earth's exiles had struck a crippling blow to one of their greatest enemies. But as Quinn stood on the steps of the Vaktar capital, looking out across the remnants of the fallen empire, he knew this was only one battle in a much larger war. The Zalran coalition still loomed, and other enemies would rise in time. But humanity's resolve was unwavering, and the seeds of their new empire had taken root deep in the galaxy. Their story had only just begun. The victory over the Vaktar was supposed to be a turning point, a symbol of Earth's exile's strength. With the Vaktar empire crumbling, many in the galaxy expected the exile's empire to grow uncontested. But as the Etheris sailed deeper into the heart of their new dominion, Quinn knew that the victory was just one part of a much larger puzzle. As they consolidated their gains, the cracks within the empire started to show. General Quinn's leadership was beginning to be tested in ways he hadn't anticipated. The newly conquered systems, though grateful for protection, were beginning to chafe under the demands of their new rulers. The exiles' growing power was impossible to ignore, and while they had found allies among those tired of living under the thumb of oppressive empires, their rule was not universally accepted. Whispers of rebellion began to surface, and dissension spread like wildfire among the systems that had only recently joined their ranks. The first sign of trouble came from the Outer Rim, where a group of star systems, once neutral, began to build their own fleet. These systems were wealthy, with trade routes running through their territories, and their leaders began to suspect that the exiles were overstepping their bounds. They had agreed to join the growing empire in exchange for security, but now, the exiles were demanding resources and military support in ways that felt like coercion. Quinn, ever the tactician, understood the delicate balance that had to be struck. The exiles were still vulnerable, and he couldn't afford to lose these new territories. But he also couldn't afford to appear weak. A confrontation was inevitable, and he knew that the pressure was mounting from all sides. At the same time, Quinn began to notice something even more unsettling: betrayal from within his own ranks. One of his most trusted officers, Commander Elena Voss, had been acting strange. She had been close to Quinn from the early days of their journey, and her unwavering loyalty had been crucial to their success. But recently, Voss had been distant, making secretive decisions that didn't align with the goals of the Empire. Quinn, unable to ignore the growing unease in his gut, ordered a discreet investigation. What his agents uncovered was something far worse than he had feared. Commander Voss had been in contact with a shadowy figure within the Zalran coalition, a high-ranking officer who had been orchestrating a plan to infiltrate and destabilize the human empire. Voss, it turned out, had been a sleeper agent all along, placed by the Zalrans to sow distrust and division from within. Confronting Voss was the hardest decision Quinn had ever made. She had been a friend, a sister in arms, and yet the evidence was undeniable. When he finally confronted her, in the quiet of his command chamber, the look in her eyes was one of defiance and resignation. "I didn't want to betray you," Voss said, her voice cold, but filled with sorrow. "But you're becoming what we fought against. You're becoming another empire. The Zalrans might have been ruthless, but you're no different. You'll swallow up the galaxy just as they did." Quinn's heart weighed heavy as he stared at her. "And that makes it okay for you to destroy everything we've built? Everything we fought for?" Voss's expression softened for a moment. "You don't see it, do you? You've grown too powerful. You'll crush us all, Quinn. You think you can make the galaxy better, but all you're doing is replacing one empire with another." Quinn's hand hovered over the command console, his mind racing. He had built this empire on the principles of freedom and survival, but now, Voss's words struck a nerve. Was this what humanity had become? Was the cycle of conquest and empire inevitable? "I won't let that happen," Quinn said firmly. He gave the order for her arrest. But as Voss was escorted away, Quinn's doubts lingered, the seeds of uncertainty taking root in his mind. Meanwhile, the rebellion on the Outer Rim was gathering strength. The systems that had once been part of the Exiles' new empire began to form their own coalition, rejecting Quinn's rule. They accused the humans of becoming no better than the empires they had risen against. And worse still, rumors spread that some of the Exiles' closest allies had secretly been in league with the rebels, undermining Quinn's authority from within. The Zalran coalition, though in disarray, saw an opportunity in the chaos. They began sending covert agents to fuel the unrest, hoping to further divide and weaken the human empire. It seemed as though Quinn was facing threats from all sides: betrayal from within, rebellion from without, and the ever-present danger of the Zalrans looming on the horizon. Quinn knew he had to act quickly. He called together his most trusted commanders, including Colonel Yarrick Stone, a battle-hardened veteran who had fought alongside him from the earliest days. They crafted a plan to neutralize the rebels and put down the growing insurrection on the Outer Rim before it spiraled out of control. The plan was simple: strike hard and fast. They would need to reclaim control over the rebellious systems with overwhelming force, before the situation could spiral into full-scale civil war. But as Quinn prepared to lead the charge, the echoes of Voss's words continued to haunt him. Would this be the beginning of the end? Would they truly become the empire they had once fought so hard to escape? The assault on the rebellious systems in the Outer Rim began with brutal efficiency. Quinn had no time to waste. His forces, bolstered by their earlier victories, moved swiftly, securing key planets and orbital stations in a series of decisive strikes. The military leaders under his command were unwavering in their support, but as the campaign unfolded, Quinn found himself troubled by the consequences of his actions. With each world brought back under control, the rebellion was crushed, but it wasn't without cost. Resistance fighters, many of them former allies, were taken into custody, and numerous cities were left in ruin. The victory was necessary to maintain the strength of the empire, but the brutality of the tactics weighed heavily on Quinn's conscience. His thoughts continually returned to the words of Commander Voss: "You're becoming what we fought against." The battles, while decisive, had left deep scars. The very people he had vowed to protect were now seeing their homes destroyed, their families torn apart, all in the name of order and unity. Was this truly the future of humanity? Would they continue to fight for peace, or were they simply repeating the mistakes of the empires they had overthrown? As the dust settled on the Outer Rim, Quinn's thoughts turned to the long-term consequences of his decisions. The alliance of star systems that had once flocked to his banner was now fractured. Some of the more moderate systems had begun to question his leadership, their faith shaken by the heavy-handed tactics that had been employed to restore order. Even among his closest advisors, doubts were beginning to surface. Colonel Yarrick Stone, Quinn's most trusted officer and longtime friend, had been the one to push for the aggressive response to the rebellion. But even Stone, a man who had seen countless wars, was beginning to voice his concerns. "General," Stone said, approaching Quinn after the final battle on the rebel-controlled planet of Sereth. "We've won the war, but I can see it in their eyes. The people are losing their faith in us. They see the cost of this victory, and they're not sure if it's worth it." Quinn nodded grimly. The rebellion had been crushed, but at what cost? The scars would remain long after the fires of battle had burned out. "I know," he replied, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "I thought we could build something better, something that would unite the galaxy. But now it feels like we're just another empire." Stone didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he spoke, his words measured. "Maybe it's time to take a step back. We've proven ourselves. We've shown that we can stand against the galaxy's biggest powers. But if we keep pushing like this, we risk everything we've fought for. We risk becoming what we despise." Quinn stared out of the viewport, watching as the fleet began its journey back to the capital. He knew that Stone's words rang true. If the Exiles continued down this path, they would lose everything that made them different from the empires they had once fled. Back at the capital, Quinn convened a meeting with his leadership council. His mind was a swirl of conflicting emotions. The war had been won, but the price had been steep. His closest allies, scientists, diplomats, and military commanders alike, looked at him with a mix of admiration and uncertainty. "We can't keep doing this," Quinn said to the council, his voice raw. "We've built an empire, but we've also created enemies. Not just on the battlefield, but within our own people. They see us as tyrants now, not liberators." Dr. Elena Farrows, the brilliant scientist who had helped turn the tide of battle with her technological innovations, spoke up. "General, I understand your concerns, but we can't just stop now. We've laid the groundwork for something greater. Yes, we've made mistakes, but this is still the only way forward. If we turn back now, we risk falling back into the chaos we once fled." Quinn's eyes met hers, and for a moment, he saw the same fire that had driven him from the beginning. But now, that fire felt dangerous, like a force they could no longer control. "We're not turning back," he said, his voice hardening. "But we need a new path. We need to show the galaxy that we're not just another empire. We need to prove that we can do better. We have to rebuild trust, and we have to do it quickly, or else we'll lose everything." The council murmured in agreement, but Quinn could see the doubt in their eyes. The Exiles had come so far, but the road ahead was more treacherous than ever. As they began to discuss their next steps, Quinn's thoughts drifted to the other looming threat, the Zalran coalition. They had been quiet after their defeat, but Quinn knew better than to assume they would remain idle forever. The Zalrans were ruthless, and their desire for revenge had only been delayed, not extinguished. The tension was palpable. The fate of the Empire rested on a knife's edge. Quinn knew they had to walk a fine line, continue to expand their influence without becoming what they had fought so hard to escape. They needed to unite the galaxy, but not through force. Not through fear. They needed to find a way to inspire, not dominate. As Quinn sat back in his chair, he realized that the hardest battles lay ahead, not on the fields of war, but in the hearts and minds of the people he had promised to protect. The future of the human empire was uncertain, but he was determined to see it through. No matter the cost. In the days that followed the defeat of the Outer Rim Rebellion, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The human-led empire, though victorious, was fractured. The fire that had once driven the Exiles to fight for freedom had begun to fade, replaced by the cold pragmatism of empire building. Quinn knew they had to change course, or else the galaxy would lose faith in them, and, more importantly, they would lose themselves. The council convened again, but this time, the mood was different. There were no more arguments about military action or forceful tactics. There was no longer a need to talk about the cost of war, everyone in the room had already seen it. Instead, Quinn and his leadership team turned their focus inward, on the hearts and minds of the people who had fought and bled for this empire. General Quinn, ever the pragmatic leader, understood that this was not just about military victories. It was about creating something that transcended the cycle of conquest. It was about hope, not fear. It was about reminding the galaxy that humanity had once built a civilization from nothing, that they had once overcome extinction itself, and that they could do it again, but this time, they would do it together. "We will never be the tyrants we fought against," Quinn said, addressing the council with renewed conviction. The purpose of this empire was never to dominate or enslave. It was to unite, to offer hope where there was none. "We will build a galaxy where no one feels small, where no one is left behind. If we want the galaxy to see us as something different, we must show them who we are, and what we stand for." There was a murmur of agreement among the council members, but it was clear that the true challenge lay ahead, rebuilding the trust that had been broken and demonstrating that the human empire could be a force for good in the galaxy. But this time, it would not be done through force. This time, they would lead through diplomacy, innovation, and unity. Colonel Yarrick Stone, once a staunch advocate for military strength, was the first to speak. "It's going to take time, General. The damage we've done, it's not something we can undo overnight. But I'm with you. If you can show the galaxy what we stand for, I'll follow you to the ends of the stars." The council agreed to send a message of reconciliation to the alien systems they had conquered. The human empire would be built not just on military might but on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. It was a difficult decision, but Quinn knew it was the only way forward. In the weeks that followed, ambassadors were sent to the far corners of the galaxy. The message was clear: the Empire was not an overlord, but a partner. Systems that had once fought back against the Exiles' expansion were offered the chance to join in peaceful cooperation, to share in the rebuilding of a fractured galaxy. The first to respond were the Varkith, a once violent species who had been brutalized by the Zalran Empire. The Varkith had long feared the rise of another empire, but when they received Quinn's message, they saw a chance for something different, a chance to rebuild, not through conquest, but through mutual strength. The shift in strategy was felt across the galaxy. In a matter of months, many of the star systems that had once viewed the humans as invaders began to open their doors, accepting the offer of cooperation and peace. And while there were still skeptics, those who remembered the old ways of empire and mistrusted humanity's intentions, slowly, the tide began to turn. The Zalran coalition, though bruised by their defeat, had not forgotten their desire for revenge. They sent spies, built alliances with dissenting factions, and bided their time. But Quinn was ready. He knew they would strike again, but he had learned from his previous mistakes. This time, the Empire would stand strong not through force, but through unity. Humanity had come so far, and Quinn knew that the future of the galaxy would not be determined by war alone. It would be determined by the courage to change, the willingness to build a better future, and the belief that even the smallest spark of hope could light the darkest corners of the galaxy. The Empire's rise from exile was complete, not just as a military power, but as a beacon of what could be accomplished when the most unlikely of peoples dared to dream. Earth's exiles, once thought of as insignificant, had shown the galaxy the power of a determined few. They had built an empire, not through dominance, but through cooperation, resilience, and the enduring spirit of humanity. The galaxy, once teetering on the edge of destruction, had found new hope in the heart of the exiles. And though the journey ahead was far from easy, humanity's new empire stood as a testament to the power of unity, and the unyielding drive to forge a better future, no matter the odds. This marks the conclusion of the story. Let me know if you need any adjustments or additional details.